Most people believe that if they just explain themselves clearly enough, people will finally respect them. The opposite is usually true. Every time you justify a decision you were never required to justify, you hand away a quiet piece of your authority. The most powerful people in history understood this in their bones. Today you'll learn the exact mechanism behind why silence reads as strength, the one condition where it dangerously backfires, and how to start using it by tomorrow morning. Let's start with the belief almost everyone holds, because it feels like common sense. The belief is that clarity earns respect. If I explain my reasoning carefully enough, people will see that I'm competent. They'll trust my judgment, and they'll come around. So you over-explain. Someone questions your decision, and you lay out your logic, point by point, hoping the sheer quality of your reasoning will win them over. You send the long message instead of the short one. You add the extra sentence of justification. You answer the question nobody actually forced you to answer. And here is the strange part. The more thoroughly you explain, the less authority you seem to carry. You've watched this happen. The most capable person in the room, the one who actually understands the problem, slowly loses control of it to someone less competent but more composed. They talk less. They explain almost nothing. And somehow the room bends toward them. That isn't charisma, and it isn't luck. It's a mechanism, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So let's take it apart. Here is the mechanism. Explanation is a status signal, and it usually signals the opposite of what you intend. When you volunteer a justification that no one demanded, you send an unconscious message underneath your words. My decision needs defending, and your approval is a variable in my choice. You've just told the room that your position is negotiable and that you are the one waiting to be judged. Psychologists would call this a costly signal working against you. The very act of explaining reframes the interaction. You are no longer the person setting the terms. You are the person auditioning for acceptance. Think about who explains and who doesn't. The nervous employee over-explains why they're 3 minutes late. The confident executive simply says it won't happen again and moves on. Over-explanation is one of the most reliable anxiety tells there is, and other people read it instantly, even when they can't name what they're reading. Now here is the deeper layer. Ambiguity is power, because ambiguity forces the other person to do the interpreting. When you say less than necessary, you create a small vacuum, and the human mind cannot leave a vacuum alone. People rush to fill it. They wonder what you meant. They read into your silence, and crucially, whoever is being interpreted holds the power in the exchange, because everyone else is spending their energy trying to decode you, while you spend none decoding yourself. Robert Greene compressed this into a single law in the 48 Laws of Power. Always say less than necessary. His reasoning is precise. The more you say, the more common you appear, and the less in control. Say something ordinary in few words, and it seems clever. Say something clever in too many, and it seems foolish. There's a mechanical reason a question feels like pressure. A direct question is a small trap. It silently demands that you justify yourself right now, on the questioner's timeline, on the questioner's terms. The untrained response is to comply instantly and start explaining. The trained response is to recognize that you are allowed to not fill that silence. A pause is not weakness. A pause transfers the discomfort back across the table. The person who can sit inside a silence without flinching is the person who is not being managed by the moment. So the mechanism has 3 moving parts. 1, explanation signals that you're the one being evaluated. 2, ambiguity forces others to spend their energy interpreting you. And 3, silence transfers the pressure and the anxiety onto them. Hold those 3 in mind, because everything that follows is just this mechanism playing out at scale. Now the evidence. For this, we go to the single most powerful monarch in European history, and a man who ran an entire court on the strategic use of almost nothing. Louis XIV, the Sun King of France. At the height of his reign, he controlled a court packed with the most ambitious, dangerous, and scheming nobles on the continent, men who in an earlier generation had waged civil war against the crown. And he controlled them in large part by refusing to explain himself. When a courtier approached him with a request, a title, a favor, a marriage, a command in the army, Louis had a standard reply. 2 words, je verrai, I shall see. That was often the entire answer. Not yes, not no, not because of this or that, just I shall see. Think about what those 2 words do. They commit to nothing. They reveal nothing. And they force the other person to keep interpreting, to keep waiting, to keep orbiting him in the hope of an answer. The nobles of Versailles spent years of their lives learning to read the smallest signals from this man, a raised eyebrow, a slight change in tone, the length of a pause, because he gave them so little to work with that every fragment became precious. And that was the point. By withholding explanation, Louis made his approval the single scarcest and most valuable currency in France. He went further, and this is what separates a lucky habit from a deliberate system. He built the Palace of Versailles into a machine for exactly this. He required the great nobles to live at court under his eye, competing endlessly for tiny signs of his favor, who got to attend his morning waking ceremony, who handed him his shirt, who received a single word of acknowledgement. He kept them so busy decoding his silence and chasing his approval that they had no time and no unity left to plot against him. He didn't dominate the most dangerous men in Europe by talking more. He dominated them by making everyone else fill the silence he left. And you don't need a palace to see this at work. Jump forward to the American president Calvin Coolidge, remembered by the nickname Silent Cal. He said so little that a woman once told him she'd bet she could get more than 2 words out of him. His reply, "You lose." It sounds like a joke, but Coolidge understood the same mechanism Louis did. In a town built on talking, the man who withheld words made everyone lean in to catch the few he offered. 2 men, 3 centuries apart, running the identical play. Say less, explain less, and let the scarcity of your words do the work that a flood of them never could. Now, if I stopped here, I'd be handing you a dangerous half-truth, and this channel doesn't deal in half-truths. So let's talk about where this fails, because silence is a scalpel, not a shield, and used in the wrong moment, it will cut you instead. In April of 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 workers and unleashing the largest marine oil spill in history. At the center of the response was Tony Hayward, the chief executive of BP. And here the strategy of withholding, of managing the story, of not giving the public the raw, accountable answer they were owed, detonated. When people are frightened, when they have a genuine stake in your decision, and when they are owed the truth, withholding it does not read as authority. It reads as contempt. Hayward compounded it with a now infamous line. In the middle of the disaster, he said he'd like his life back. The problem wasn't too many words. The problem was that he gave people everything except the honest, engaged accountability the moment demanded. And this reveals the exact condition that inverts the rule. Strategic silence protects authority you have already earned in situations where no one is owed an explanation. It cannot manufacture trust you haven't earned, and it cannot substitute for accountability you genuinely owe. When a leader goes silent in a real crisis, when a partner refuses to explain something that legitimately affects the other person, when someone with power withholds from people who depend on them, silence stops signaling strength. It starts signaling absence, evasion, or contempt. So how do you tell the 2 situations apart? Ask one question. Does this person have a legitimate stake in my decision, or are they simply fishing for reassurance? If they have a real stake, if the decision affects them, if they are owed the reasoning, then explanation isn't weakness. It's respect, and withholding it is negligence. But if they're merely testing you, probing for approval, or trying to pull you into justifying a choice that is yours alone to make, then that is exactly the moment to say less than necessary. The master isn't the person who is always silent. The master is the person who knows precisely which of those 2 situations they're standing in. So let's turn this into something you can use starting today. 5 moves. 1. Cut the reflex because. Before you justify anything, pause and ask yourself a single question. Did anyone actually require this reason? Or am I about to explain simply to soothe my own discomfort? Most over-explaining isn't for the other person, it's to relieve your own anxiety. If no one required the reason, stop at the decision. 2. Replace justification with direction. Weak sounds like, I decided we should do this because of A and B and also C. Strong sounds like, we're doing this. Here's the first step. A justification invites debate because you've framed your decision as an argument to be won. A direction absorbs the room because you've framed it as a fact to be acted on. Same decision, completely different gravity. 3. Deploy the pause. When someone puts you on the spot, let a full beat pass before you answer. It will feel unbearable for about 1 second, and then you'll notice the pressure quietly shift onto them. The person who can hold a silence without rushing to fill it is signaling without a word that they are not managed by the question. 4. Reserve your full explanation for the people who have earned it. This isn't about becoming cold or secretive with everyone. People with a genuine stake in your decision get your complete reasoning, generously. People who are only fishing for reassurance get a calm, I'll let you know. Spend your transparency where it's owed, not where it's extracted. 5. Watch your own tells. The goal isn't to perform mystery, it's to stop leaking anxiety through over-explanation. Notice the moments you rush to justify, the messages where you add one more defensive sentence, the times you answer a question no one really asked. Each one is a small donation of your authority. Keep them. Do these consistently and something shifts. People start leaning toward you instead of the other way around, and you'll finally understand that authority was never about saying more. It was about needing to say less. But controlling how much you reveal is only half the game. The other half is reading the people you're staying silent in front of, knowing who in the room actually holds the power before you decide how to play it, because deference cues never fully hide. Next, we break down how to read who really holds power in a room in under 60 seconds. Watch that one next.